After the unmitigated disaster that was Stalingrad, you'd think the German High Command might reconsider their "let's just punch them really hard in one spot" strategy. Instead, they looked at a map, saw a massive 150-mile-wide bulge in the Soviet line around the city of Kursk, and had a collective flash of genius. "Let's attack it," they said, from both sides, at the same time. This plan, codenamed Operation Citadel, was so blindingly obvious that Soviet intelligence, and probably any farmer with a decent view, knew about it months in advance. The Germans, however, decided the key to success was to wait. And wait. They were waiting for their new toys, the Panther and Tiger tanks. Because if there's one thing a surprise attack needs, it's a 4-month delay to let your opponent prepare. While the Wehrmacht was patiently waiting for their super tanks to arrive, the Red Army was engaging in the most ambitious landscaping project in human history. Under Marshal Georgy Zhukov, they constructed 8 defensive belts stretching back over 100 miles deep. We're talking about digging 3,000 miles of trenches. That's like digging a trench from New York to Los Angeles. They also laid down around 400,000 mines, creating the highest density of explosives anywhere on the planet. They packed so many anti-tank guns into the front lines that their gun density reached about 41 per mile of front. The Soviets essentially built a fortress the size of a small country, baited it with the Red Army, and then just sat there, waiting for the Germans to politely knock on the door with artillery shells. So, the big day arrives, and Germany unveils its stars. The Tiger I tank, a 57-ton beast with an 88mm gun that could kill a T-34 from a mile away. Impressive until you remember it was mechanically fragile and drank fuel like it was going out of style. Then there was the Panther, a beautiful piece of engineering with sloped armor, great speed, and a nasty habit of its engine catching on fire. Just a minor design flaw. But the real masterpiece was the Ferdinand tank destroyer, a 65-ton mobile bunker with a gun that could vaporize anything it hit. The designers, in their infinite wisdom, forgot one tiny detail: a machine gun. So this Titan could kill a tank at 2 miles, but was completely helpless against a single Soviet soldier who could just walk up and stick a grenade on it. Truly peak German engineering. The Soviets had a different philosophy. While the Germans were building a handful of exquisite, overly engineered panzers, the Soviets were churning out the T-34 like sausages. Was the T-34 a perfect tank? Absolutely not. The crew ergonomics were awful, the optics were mediocre, and early versions had a 2-man turret that was horribly inefficient. But it was cheap, it was mechanically reliable, and they built over 80,000 of them. The Soviet plan wasn't to outshoot the Tigers, it was to overwhelm them. Their strategy was basically to send 5 T-34s at 1 Tiger. 4 would get destroyed, but the 5th one would get close enough to put a shell through its thinner side armor. It's a brutal, horrifying, and tragically effective form of math. The main German effort came in the south, led by the 2nd SS Panzer Corps, the cream of the crop. On July 12, they clashed with the Soviet 5th Guards tank army near a village called Prokhorovka. This is often hyped as the largest tank battle in history. It wasn't, but it was certainly the messiest. It wasn't a neat duel on an open plain. It was a chaotic, swirling melee in smoke and dust, with hundreds of tanks fighting at point-blank range. The Soviets deliberately charged in close because their 76mm guns were useless against a Tiger's front armor at a distance, but could work up close. This negated the German range advantage and turned the battle into a desperate, brutal brawl. Tanks were ramming each other. Crews were bailing out of burning wrecks. It was absolute pandemonium. You can't talk about Kursk without mentioning the air war, because it was just as insane. The Luftwaffe and the Soviet Air Force threw thousands of planes into the sky. The Germans had their Stuka dive bombers, equipped with 37mm cannons specifically for killing tanks. Terrifying. But the Soviets had the Ilyushin Il-2 This thing wasn't an airplane. It wasn't an airplane. It was a flying tank. It was so heavily armored that German pilots complained their bullets just bounced off it. It carried rockets, bombs, and cannons, and it flew low and slow, methodically hunting German panzers. The Sturmovik pilots suffered horrific losses, but they inflicted just as much pain on the German armored columns below. They became a symbol of Soviet resilience, a slow, ugly, unstoppable weapon that just kept coming. Everyone talks about Prokhorovka in the south, but the fighting in the northern sector was just as vicious, if less glamorous. Here, General Walter Model's 9th Army ran headfirst into a defensive network that made the South look like a welcome mat. The Soviets had accurately predicted his main line of attack and had packed the area with an unbelievable concentration of anti-tank guns and mines. This is where the mighty Ferdinand tank destroyers met their inglorious fate. They'd knock out Soviet tanks from extreme range, advance, and then get swarmed by infantry they couldn't defend against because, again, no machine guns. Model's advance was measured in yards per day and paid for with a horrifying number of tanks. It was a slow, grinding, and utterly demoralizing failure that perfectly showcased the futility of the entire operation. While Germany was busy losing its entire armored reserve in a field in Russia, something else was happening. On July 10th, the Allies landed in Sicily. Suddenly, the German High Command had a much bigger problem than a stubborn bulge in the Eastern Front. A certain German leader with a questionable mustache had to make a choice. Keep pushing in a battle you're clearly losing, or pull your best troops out to go fight somewhere else? He made the call. The elite SS Panzer divisions were ordered to pack up and head to Italy. Operation Citadel was cancelled. Not with a bang, but with a whimper. The biggest tank battle in history was called off because of a beach party in the Mediterranean. History has a fantastic sense of ironic timing. So, who won? Well, it depends on how you define winning. The Germans lost fewer tanks and men in the immediate battle, a fact they were very proud of. But they lost their best-trained crews, their irreplaceable Tiger and Panther tanks, and, worst of all, they lost the strategic initiative on the Eastern Front forever. They never again mounted a major offensive against the Soviet Union. From Kursk onward, they were only retreating. The Soviets, on the other hand, took absolutely catastrophic losses. Some of their tank armies were effectively wiped out. But here's the thing, they could replace them. While Germany was wondering how to fix its handful of broken super tanks, the Soviets were already shipping thousands of new T-34s to the front. Kursk wasn't a victory in a battle, it was a victory of industrial production and a willingness to accept losses that would have made any other army collapse. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more historical insights. Thanks for watching, nerds!